Greetings, Divine Blessed Loved Ones. Paisley Parvati Devi here with our weekly yoga philosophy share. So if you are new, every single week I've been going live on my Facebook page, Liviti Yogini, with a reading from this book, the Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice. If you have never heard of the Yamas and Niyamas before, they are a wonderful jumping off point for starting to learn about yoga philosophy and applying them to our everyday lives. So I'm here today by this beautiful altar my roommate and I built over the weekend. Today is the new moon in Leo. It goes exact at 10:41 p.m. EDT this evening, and so on Sunday we hosted a big new moon gathering event potluck. It was such a beautiful time with some really amazing people, and we built this giant altar in our living room for it. So I just thought that I would show you guys. If you are new here to the series, like I said, I go live every Tuesday with a new reading. Previous readings will be posted on the Facebook page as well as my YouTube channel. And it's every Tuesday from 11 a.m. PST or 2 p.m. EST. So the Yamas and Niyamas, they're part of the traditional philosophy of Ashtanga Yoga. Like I said, if you are new to any yoga philosophy, this is a wonderful introduction, a great jumping off point. The Yamas and Niyamas are actually considered the first two limbs of what's known as the eight-limbed path or the eightfold path. Ashtanga actually translates to eightfold. So Ashtanga Yoga is traditional yoga, the yoga philosophy that I'm sharing with you here today. And the Yamas and Niyamas could be likened to like the Ten Commandments from Christianity. It's a little bit different than that, but a lot of them are somewhat similar. So the first 5 tenets, the yamas, are considered to be actions to be restrained in order to attain inner peace. And these tend to relate more toward our relationships with other people and the outside world. And then the second 5 tenets are called the niyamas, and those are actions to be cultivated in order to attain inner peace. And those tend to relate more toward our own internal experience and our relationships with ourselves, our internal narratives, if you will, and how we can clean those up. So like I said, ethical guidelines, suggestions for living a life of dharma, living a life of duty and right action, and ultimately causing as little harm as possible to not only those around us and in the external world, but also causing minimal harm to ourselves so that we can live a life that is free from suffering as much as possible, which is what the teachings of yoga are really all about. So if my content is resonating with you, I would love it if you gave me a thumbs up, comment. I always love to hear your experiences and reflections on all the content that I share. Tag a friend, share with a friend, make sure that you're subscribing, and we'll jump right in. So again, reading from the Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. And so we just restarted the series. I had read through the entire book on my main Facebook page, and now we're restarting on the Liviti Yogini page. And last week we started the first chapter, which is on nonviolence, or ahimsa, which translates to nonviolence. So if you would like, I definitely recommend and encourage going back to last week's video. It could be after today's video, but we're just reading the first half of this chapter on nonviolence, and it is said that if you can truly master nonviolence on the physical, subtle, and causal levels, then you will have mastered all of yoga and essentially be enlightened. So these philosophies are very interesting in that they are a circular theory. Maybe something won't make sense the first time that you hear it, but as you come back to it and you can continuously study the same concept over and over again, it will become more and more clear over time. So, and another way that is circular is because it's not linear. So in the Western mind, we tend to have a mindset of like, okay, first you do A, and then you get to B, and then comes C, and you just keep going until you get all of the steps going up the ladder. But in a lot of Eastern philosophies and mindsets, it's much more of a holistic approach, kind of like web thinking, and yes, even though we're starting with the first yama, which is again nonviolence, and if you can fully embody that idea, then you've essentially mastered all of yoga. By no means are we able to fully embody that today, or fully understand even today. So I always like to start by before we dive into the content, let's just take a moment here, wherever you are, standing, sitting, take a moment, if it's practical and safe, to close your eyes. Just deepening the breath here for a moment or two. Watching the breath move in and out. Becoming present in this moment. And as you take note of the breath, deepening, inhaling fully, expanding the lungs, and exhaling, releasing all the air out. Continue breathing deeply. And as we dive into the content today, I just invite you to listen with as open of a mind and heart as you can. Again, maybe not all of this will fully resonate or even make sense today. I just invite you to have faith that what you need to hear will resonate today, and anything else, we're just planting a seed. And like that circular thinking I mentioned, we can continue to come back to the seed of a concept, perhaps watering it, tending it, until we reach a deeper, more full understanding. Alright, with that in mind, here we are, Chapter 1, Ahimsa, Part 2, and this segment is titled Self-Love. Our ability to stay balanced and courageous has much to do with how we feel about ourselves. The following two stories illustrate this point. Pandit Rajmini Tuganite, spiritual head of the Himalayan Institute, tells of an incident with his young son. The family has just returned from India, and the child began behaving strangely. He was biting and pinching his parents and playmates. Rajmani was beside himself with this strange behavior from his sweet son, until he realized that in India his son had gotten worms, and the worms were pinching and biting his little insides. The son was only displaying outwardly the experience of his insides. Yoga instructor and mentor Anne Maxwell tells of the abrupt turbulence in her home when her 3-year-old son Brooks suddenly began holding his stools. Holding his stools caused him great discomfort, and in turn the whole household was affected, to the extent that the day was shaped for the whole family by whether or not Brooks was holding his stools. The days he held it in were the days that the whole family suffered from the oppressive misery of a little 3-year-old boy. Brooks was displaying outwardly the experience of his insides. These stories show that how we treat ourselves is in truth how we treat those around us. If you are a taskmaster with yourself, others will feel your whip. If you are critical of yourself, others will feel your high expectations of themselves as well. If you are lighthearted and forgiving with yourselves, others will feel the ease and joy of being with you. If you find laughter and delight in yourself, others will be healed in your presence. I'll just reiterate that because I need to hear it probably more than you guys do. If you are a taskmaster with yourself, others will feel your whip. If you are critical of yourself, others will feel your high expectations of themselves as well. But if you are lighthearted and forgiving with yourself, others will feel the ease and joy of being with you. If you find laughter and delight in yourself, others will be healed in your presence. We would never purchase a can of red paint and expect it to be the color blue when we apply it to our walls. And yet we can be so harsh and demanding with ourselves and then expect to be loving with others. But it just doesn't work that way. The color of the paint inside the can is the color of the paint that comes out of the can. The color of how we treat ourselves is the color of how we treat others. If we can't be safe with ourselves, others can never be safe with us, and the world can never be a safe place. I spent 3 years consulting with a firm out of Boulder, Colorado. The work itself was stimulating and rewarding, but I was on such a fast-paced track that one day I realized I had not even taken time in those 3 years for one of my most delicious pleasures, a long, hot bubble bath. When I finally took a pause and looked at the whirlwind life I had created, I also realized that I had not played with my grandchildren or checked in with my friends, and I was becoming quite demanding of those around me. Others were feeling my bite. I had created a violent inner world of pushing, overdoing, and undersleeping that had seeped into all of my relationships. When I quit the work and began to bring some ease and pleasure back into my life, all my relationships became more joyful and ease-filled. One experiment I did as I began to make this huge change was to practice falling in love with myself. I say experiment because I was curious what effect this would have on others as well as on me. Falling in love is such a delightful place. The other can do no wrong. The loved one is always beautiful and delightful to be with, and you want to be with them all the time. Falling in love leaves no room for the violence of expectations and judgments. It is free for delight and joy and spontaneity. Everyone around the lover also feels the love. Love creates a spontaneous combustion that includes all in its path. Have I succeeded in my experiment? Not entirely, but those who know me report that I am easy and delightful to be with. We can have hearts that are full of love for others and intentions to love that are pure, but the truth is we will express that love for others by treating them the same way we treat ourselves. Ooh. Love lies at the core of nonviolence and begins with our love of self. Not a love that is egocentric, but a love that is forgiving and lenient, a love that sees the humor in the imperfections and accepts the fullness of the human expression. Fully accepting and loving ourselves in our authenticity from moment to moment. A beautiful mantra to practice is, I love and accept myself. I see myself as whole right now, in this moment, in my fullness and my rawness, exactly as I am. Love lies at the core of nonviolence and begins with our love of self. Not a love that is egocentric, but a love that is forgiving and lenient, a love that sees the humor in the imperfections and accepts the fullness of the human expression. Treat yourself how you would treat a small child or a very close friend, someone that you would never want to hurt. Only when we find this love for all the parts of ourselves can we begin to fully express the love that wells up inside of us for others. Finding this love for all the parts of ourselves means that we have to forgive ourselves. Without forgiveness, we carry guilt like a heavy burden around our hearts. Guilt holds our love for self and others hostage and keeps us bound to a one-sided expectation of the human experience. I cannot say this enough times. Our inability to love and accept all the pieces of ourselves creates ripples, tiny acts of violence that have huge and lasting impacts on others. I have in my life the privilege to hear many people speak their personal feelings, and I am constantly surprised by how much of their speech is a reporting of failings and self-loathing and attempts to fix themselves. The attempts to change self rather than love self keep us trapped in vicious cycles that we can't crawl out of. There is such a big disconnect for me as I hear others share their personal confessions of failure. Even as I hear the words, I am seeing before me a beautiful, unique expression of the human being, and my heart is overwhelmed. I find myself once again uttering my secret prayer that this person could someday see how magnificent they really are. Courage and love are deeply connected. When love became the Lord of my life, I became fearless. These words were expressed by Swami Rama in his journey on this earth and are echoed by Jesus' statement, "Perfect love casts out fear." Where fear creates harm and violence, love creates expansion and nonviolence and the true safety that we seek. Nonviolence is woven with love, and love of other is woven with love of self. These cannot be separated. Violence to others. If we cannot find love for ourselves, it becomes easy to look outward and begin to focus on others, hiding our own sense of failure and fear under our blazing concern for others. Who can relate to that? So many of us do resort to the caretaking and codependent habits, reflecting that outwardly when really we just need to look inside and love ourselves and give ourselves more grace and lenience and compassion and patience. It's almost as if we are secretly saying, my life is a mess, I'll fix yours. I'll feel better if I fix yours. If we are not honest with ourselves, we can even go to bed with a sense of pride in the amazing things we have done for others that day. We may even feel holy about our arduous feats of self-sacrifice. In reality, we are holding our own sense of self-failure by telling others how to live their lives. When we are unwilling to look deeply and courageously into our own lives, we can easily violate others in many subtle ways that we may not even be aware of, thinking that we are actually helping them. I think of like dance moms, or those parents who are constantly taking their kids to auditions and or whatever it is, like hoping that their child would be some kind of a sports star, a star athlete, because those were things that the parents themselves always wanted in their lives, and it just didn't end up happening. So now they're like living vicariously through their children, thinking that they're helping their children because they think it's this great thing, but whether or not the child actually wants to do that is not as important maybe, or not heard. Thinking we know what is better for others becomes a subtle way we do violence. When we take it upon ourselves to help the other, we whittle away at their sense of autonomy. Nonviolence asks us to trust the other's ability to find the answer they are seeking. It asks us to have faith in the other, not feel sorry for them. Nonviolence asks us to trust the other's journey and love and support others to their highest image of themselves, not our highest image of them. It asks that we stop managing ourselves, our experience, others, and others' experiences of us. Leave the other person free of our needs, free to be themselves, and free to see us as they choose. The violence we do to others by thinking we know what's best for them is dramatically illustrated in a story from India. It seems a passerby witnessed a monkey in a tree with a fish. The monkey was saying to the fish, "But I saved you from drowning." The monkey, thinking it had saved the fish, had taken the fish to the place that couldn't meet any of the fish's needs for survival or growth. We can't save people or fix them. All we could do is model, and that points the finger back at us. Leading by representation, right? Leading by example. I experienced this well-intentioned help from my husband, who, out of love for me, began to take anything heavy out of my arms and carry it himself. At first I thought this was sweet of him and appreciated the gesture, but over a period of time I began to notice that some of the strength was leaving my arms. By not occasionally carrying heavy things, I was getting weaker. Handling challenges gives each of us a sense of skill, self-esteem, and accomplishment. When we try to fix or save someone else, we are keeping them from getting the learning the situation has for them. Like the monkey in the story above, when we try to take someone out of their challenge or suffering, we take them out of the environment that offers them a rich learning experience, an opportunity for their growth, right? Like children sheltering their kids too much, then those kids may end up being a little bit afraid of the world because they've never had to live in the real world. They've always been under the wing of their very overprotective and loving. It comes from a good place. Parents. We are in a sense cutting them off from the power of growing stronger, more competent, and more compassionate. It can often feel like torture to let a person we care about sit in the suffering and challenges of their life. We almost can't help ourselves. If they are hurting, we want to make them feel better. If they have a decision to make, we want to tell them how to make it. And yet the only thing we have to offer that is truly of value is to sit with them where they are, as they are. We need to trust suffering and trust challenge and mistakes. They are what refine us when we don't run from them. Every challenge is really just an opportunity in disguise, right? Nell Morton, a feminist writer of the 70s, spoke eloquently about the power we have to hear each other into being. Rachel Naomi Remen echoes, "Our listening creates a sanctuary for the homeless parts within another person. There is nothing to fix or save in another. There is only the gift of listening. People need a safe place to hear themselves. To return to the monkey and the fish story, all we have to offer in the end is to get into the water with those in need, not to bring them into the tree with us. Yes, so much of the time when we're seeing someone suffering or in a challenge of some sort and we want to fix it or help them or support them in whatever way we can, it's a little very tempting to go into a place of offering advice or trying to just do something for someone to protect them, or we think that we're helping, but again, really we're actually just taking away their opportunity for growth. And oftentimes what somebody really needs in the case of like emotional turmoil, or just like generally needing to experience something or feel an emotion, all that person really needs so much of the time is just to be heard, just to have a safe opening to talk and, like this says, hear themselves, and really integrate and experience and express fully without any kind of judgment. Usually even feedback or advice of any kind can actually be more harmful than helpful, because again, so much of the time what that person actually just needs is a space to be heard and like truly heard. And if we're busy thinking about our response or thinking about how we can fix or change the situation for that person, then we can't truly be listening to them, right? Because we're thinking. So next time someone comes to you with a problem, try just listening and not actually responding unless they specifically ask for your advice, and see what happens. Just let them feel heard, and after, give them the space to talk without interrupting, and then after they've expressed what they need to express, just say something simple like, I hear you and I see you, like that must be a really difficult experience you're going through, and I'm here for you, you're not alone. So much of the time that can help so much, that's all that person needs. Okay, to return to the monkey and the fish story, all we have to offer in the end is to get into the water with those in need and offer comfort, not to bring them into the tree with us, not to fix it for them. Worry is another way violence gets masked as caring. Worry is a lack of faith in the other and cannot exist simultaneously with love. Either we have faith in the other person to do their best, or we don't. Worry says, I don't trust you to do your life right. Worry comes from a place of arrogance that I know better what should be happening in your life. I'll read that again because that's another big one. Worry is another way violence gets masked as caring. Worry is a lack of faith in the other and cannot exist simultaneously with love. Either we have faith in the other person to do their best, or we don't. Worry says, I don't trust you to do your life right. I don't trust you. Worry comes from a place of arrogance that I know better what you should be doing in your life. Worry says, I don't trust your journey or your answers or your timing. Worry is a fear that hasn't grown up yet. It is the misuse of our imagination, because it only exists in our mind, right? We both devalue and insult others when we worry about them. I know that might be a hard pill for some of us to swallow, especially those of us who are parents, but it goes back to taking away folks' opportunities, and especially children's opportunities for growth and learning. Yes, of course, as a parent, it's imperative to keep your child out of harm, and some ways may be more obvious than others, for example, keeping them from running out in the street, but a lot of situations are more nuanced than that, and we really want to empower our children with the tools they need to feel like they can handle anything that comes their way, and see it as an opportunity rather than a defeat. So I'd like to discern this difference between help and support. For me, help carries the connotation that I am more skilled at life's decisions and challenges than the other person is. Help is a one-up on the other person, whereas support meets the other person on equal playing ground with equal ability and is able to sit with more awe and respect than others. The Chrysalis Center for Battered Women in Minneapolis, Minnesota has a beautiful motto that embodies the concept of trusting over worry and support over help. The motto states, every woman has her own answer. Every woman has her own timing. Every woman has her own path. It comes down to this. Do I go to my child, my friend, my partner, myself with love or with worry? Which has more breath, more space, more efficient use of energy, more building power. What would happen in the lives of others if we could choose love over worry and carry this kind of trust and belief in our loved ones? When we can truly love and accept all of ourselves, compassion begins to blossom in our hearts, and we begin to see others with different eyes. We learn compassion as we dissolve our personal version of the world and grow gentle eyes that are not afraid to see reality as it is. We learn compassion as we stop living in our heads where we can neatly arrange things and ground ourselves in our bodies where things might not be so neat. We learn compassion as we stop trying to change ourselves and others and choose instead to soften the boundaries that keep us separated from what we don't understand. We learn compassion as we do simple acts of kindness and allow others' lives to be as important as our own. When we begin to expand the boundaries of the heart, we can see clearly to act in ways that truly make a difference. Compassion is a clear response to the needs of the moment. We see this truth lived out in the lives of the great ones. They act with a compassion and skill that truly changes things. In the New Testament, the Greek word that gets translated to compassion, okay, you guys, I'm gonna butcher this. Splagchnizomai. Splagchnizomai. If anyone speaks Greek, please feel free to correct me. This word literally means to have feelings in the bowels or other inward parts. We tend to think of the heart as the place of compassion, but in Jesus' day, emotions were understood to be centered in one's bowels. Because compassion was understood to carry a very visceral, gut-wrenching inner reaction, it was used sparingly by the New Testament gospel writers. When the gospel writers did use this word, it was to portray a person that was touched so deeply and profoundly by the situation of another that they were moved to take immediate action on behalf of the one who was suffering. These gospel writers understood compassion to be more than a sorrowful feeling. It was a powerful inner response, leading to an immediate outward action that took a risk on behalf of the other. A friend tells of an incident that happened to her many years ago. A woman with a new baby from the apartment next door began frantically screaming that her husband had locked himself in the bathroom and was killing himself. My friend, after dialing 911, broke all the rules of keeping herself from danger by somehow getting into the bathroom and beginning to hold this man who was by now lying on the floor, bleeding profusely. My friend risked all precautions to soothe and comfort this man as they both waited for help to come. Compassion is like this. It moves us across the boundaries of established norms and often past the boundaries of safety, rushing headlong to do what it can to ease another's suffering. Compassion forgets itself and the standards of protocol to answer the cries of another. We may not yet have the kind of courage and depth of compassion that my friend displayed, but we can, in all of our encounters, begin to practice acts of kindness. When my husband was 11, his dad was killed in a car accident, leaving 7 small children and a stunned wife behind. My husband continues to tenderly tell and retell how one of his uncles began to periodically stop by the house, coaxing himself and his siblings into the backyard for a game of softball, taking them to their very first Vikings football game, and on the best of snow days, driving them to a secluded road with a fabulous hill. From there, the uncle would haul them in his station wagon up the hill so they could ride their sleds down that hill, only to repeat the action again and again. Seeing 7 bewildered nieces and nephews whose father had been suddenly killed, this uncle had compassion. Not one had asked him for anything. This uncle, moved by the visceral gut feeling, took unsolicited action on behalf of the whole family, and it made all the difference for my husband. Lucille Clifton once said, "Every pair of eyes facing you has probably experienced something you could not endure. Every human being walking this earth has painful stories tucked in the corners of their hearts." If we could remember this truth, perhaps we could see the eyes of compassion, rather than with the eyes of our own judgments and preferences. While attending a workshop at Esalen, I met a man from Tokyo who epitomized the compassion and gentleness of nonviolence. He had a certain light about him, and I observed that others were as attracted to him as I was. I was delighted one afternoon to find myself in his company during lunch and being privileged to hear his story. He had been on the fast track in Japan, an entrepreneur of great talent and dedication, moving up the success ladder at a rapid pace. In one swift moment, his life changed when his best friend, who had been paralleling his high life of high success, suddenly dropped dead of a heart attack. I sat mesmerized as this man across from me at the table spoke in low and certain tones that at this moment he saw his life unfold before him and instantly retired from business to begin running marathons. More incredibly, he had never trained. He just began to run for the love of running and for the love of life. Now in his late 40s, he had been running a marathon a week for the past 5 years. To look at him, I had to marvel because he had a stocky body with bowed legs, and yet he had never suffered even the slightest injury. He flew all over the world to run a marathon a weekend, and that was his training. When asked how he accomplished this kind of stamina with no injury and no training, he reverently replied, "With each step I touch the earth lightly to do her no harm, and she in turn does me no harm." Whatever we find ourselves engaged in, this jewel of ahimsa or nonviolence asks us to step lightly, do no harm, and to honor the relationship we have with the earth, with each other, and with ourselves. And that concludes the chapter on ahimsa. So last week I shared at the end of every chapter, the author does provide some reflection exercises to work on to carry us through to the next week. So last week I shared the first 2 exercises from this chapter. So again, if you have not watched that video, I invite you to go back to last week's video, which is the first half of this chapter. So for this week, there are a couple more assignments before we move into the second chapter. So, okay, here's the first assignment. This week, watch what you are running. This week, watch where you are running interference on each other's lives. Are you a worrier, a fixer? Discern the difference between help and support. Notice what you might be avoiding in your own life because you are so interested in others' lives. And then the second assignment, for this whole week, pretend you are complete, because you are. There is no need to expect anything from yourself or to criticize or judge or change anything about you. No need to compete with anyone. No need to be more than you are or less than you are. Note your experience. Notice how much pleasure, kindness, and patience you can allow yourself to have with yourself. Okay, so 2 things. Noticing your own internal experience, where can we love ourselves more and find more self-compassion, and just trust that in this moment we are showing up as our full authentic selves, and however that looks for us in that moment is okay. Just practicing loving and accepting all parts of ourselves, and then also reflecting on how we interact with other people in our lives. Do we tend to worry about others or try to fix their problems for them? Any kind of codependent habits and tendencies like that? We are being invited to take a look at those this week. And then next week we will head into the second chapter, which is about satya or truthfulness. So yeah, that's all for the content today, you guys. I just want to plug a few things. So if you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate you liking, commenting. I love to hear your experiences. Tag a friend, share with a friend, so that this information can get out to more people. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe and bell button for me so that you can get notifications. And then if you'd like to go actually even deeper, I do a lot of yoga philosophy over on my Patreon community. So if me as a creator or my content resonates for you and you'd like to learn more about yoga philosophy, yoga practices, and Ayurveda and healthy lifestyle, we would love, love, love to have you over in the Patreon community. For just $3.33 per month, you can have access to an exclusive library of content that I curate and create consistently. And then finally, I just published, when was that? The beginning of July, I published my original hand-drawn coloring book. I'm trying to not get a glare, there you go. Creatures of the Earth. So these guys I am selling online. They are $15 to $25 sliding scale, and they include 22 hand-drawn images. I drew every single one of these myself and put so much love and intention into them for you guys. The book is inspired by my international travels. So yeah, hit me up if you're interested in purchasing one of those. Coloring is a wonderful meditative activity. It actually induces a meditative state in the brain, and it can really calm the entire nervous system, focus the mind, and relax us. Let's see, anything else? I think that's all, you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. I love every single one of you. You're beautiful. And happy new moon in Leo again. I hope that you can take some time today just to sit with yourself, feel into whatever's coming up for you in this fiery time. The sun is also in Leo, so double Leo energy. Leo is a fixed fire sign, so can be rather explosive, but also self-expressive and just so beautiful. My moon is in Leo, so I really resonate with this energy, and the new moon is an amazing time to set new intentions for the moon cycle going ahead. So I see you guys commenting. I'm going to take some time to respond to you after I post this. So much love, you guys. Have an amazing day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.